From the family grocery hauler to fire-breathing racing engines, the one name you need to know is USA Motor and Machine, located at 51 Cleveland Avenue in Nashville, Tennessee. Give them a call at 615-726-3725 or at usamotorandmachine.com.
Well, NASCAR did the right thing and overturned the penalties. Didn't take them all away, but they did do the right thing. Darlington ran this past weekend. We've got a national USAC event in Nashville this weekend. Bet you didn't know that. And a great race at Highland Rim. All that and much more. Coming up next with Larry Woody on Pit Pass.
Jeff Meeks and Chris Austin invite you to watch your favorite sports event at the Batter's Box at 43 Hermitage Avenue in Nashville, Tennessee. The Batter's Box offers shuttle service to all Titans home games. It's a great place for friends to gather for the game and after the game. So check out the Batter's Box Bar and Grill, and thanks again for sponsoring the show.
Talkapolis, the social media TV network for your city.
Well, welcome in everybody to Pit Pass. I'm Joe Williams, along with my idol, Larry Woody. And
you're not going to sing on the air, are you?
No, I promise. We did
Joe
before.
was singing a minute ago.
Yeah, we promised not to do that. Larry Woody, longtime writer. You are still writing.
I'm still writing. They'll have to pry my cold hands off my typewriter.
So still using the old Royal manual?
No, I've actually got a word processor.
Really?
I don't like it. With the typewriter, when you made a mistake, which I did every other line, you could just rip the paper out and throw it away. It felt good just to tear it out.
Oh yeah.
This you got to hit a little button and it just deletes everything. I like to physically rip it out and tear it up and throw it in the trash can. But anyway, I'm still pecking.
Yeah, where we had planned to go on this, we've already gotten away from.
Never mind.
As far as our show notes.
It started when you were singing.
Well, that's true, but you know, I always laugh when I think about computers at racetracks. I always think when Larry Woody, covering for the Tennessean, brought his first Radio Shack TRS 80 to the racetrack. We had to put in a phone line, and watching him on Saturday nights trying to hold that coupler to the phone.
I think it ran on hamsters. If you took the top off inside, there were little hamsters that ran on a wheel. And that's how old it was.
I was going to say, but there were times apparently they didn't feed the hamsters before you got it.
And Joe, the trouble with those old computers, they were terrible spellers. I can't tell you how many times I'd write a story and the computer would have words misspelled and just the copy all screwed up. They were really, really bad for that.
Well, this goes to prove people don't misspell. Computers
misspell it.
Okay, gracious. Let's get back to where we were
back
headed.
To racing.
There's more good news, if you will. Larry, I think the National Stock Car Commission got it right on the appeal of penalties by Joe Gibbs Racing. Some very draconian penalties handed down by NASCAR, and a 3-member panel that included Dennis McGlynn, the CEO at Dover Motorsports, said, guys, you've gone too far. They removed the 50-point penalty for the driver points, knocked it down to 12. They removed the owner point penalty from 50, knocked it down to 12. The money stayed the same. The biggest thing that I really thought would change, and I just could not see them going through this without some kind of even legal action, and that was the quote suspension of car owner Joe Gibbs for 6 races, and the team could get no points for those races. I could not see that happening.
Too severe for the infractions here. Like we said a couple of shows ago, it's like getting the death penalty for jaywalking. You know, the teams committed an infraction, but the penalties were too severe for those particular infractions. I thought. I mean, we're talking about centimeters, and as NASCAR said, it didn't. The stuff that they got caught doing or not doing in some cases didn't really affect the race or the performance of the car. It's just really technical stuff.
Yeah.
So I thought justice was served. I thought NASCAR made a point by serving notice, and that's mostly what it's about, Joe. Just serving notice to the teams that we're not going to play in this gray area. We've got strict rules. You've got to abide by them strictly. Then NASCAR having done that, I thought the commission gave NASCAR a way out by saying, okay, you made your point, but you made it a little too strongly. Let's ease up just a little. So I thought it was a win-win-win, NASCAR, the commission, and the teams that were involved.
Yeah, and this one was a little bit different, Larry, in that, to recap what happened, Matt Kenseth wins a race. They send the car to the R&D center, as they do for every race, and they literally take everything apart piece by piece. And the connecting rods, one of the 8 connecting rods was 2.5 grams lighter than the specification. Now,
2.5
grams.
That's
If you know, it doesn't matter if you're a cocaine guy. I guess it matters, but to us, who cares? But
it's like I said, Joe. If they hadn't waited till the dust settled on it, it would have passed. But
yeah.
the dust settled, and that made it too heavy.
Say overall, for a whole, you know, they were more. The average was more than what it needed to be. Where I'm headed here is, I think the difference in this case, Larry, I'm not sure they sent a message as much to the teams as they did to the manufacturers. And what I mean by that is, all the Toyota engines come from one specific builder in California. It's not like the old days. You know, in the old days, they used to have, every team had an engine builder, every team had an engine shop. Now you've got about 3 or 4 big players that are supplying engines to everybody.
And that was the same deal, I think, that Joe Gibbs guys were caught with. The same deal. They said all we did is took the stuff out of the box and put it on the car.
Exactly.
And but again, NASCAR's point, maybe, and like you said, Joe, to the people who put the part in the box back at the factory, you know, get it right or you're not going to play in NASCAR. So again, I think their point was, I think they wanted to make a point. I think they made a point, and I don't think we'll see much of that, any of that in the past, because NASCAR said, look, we're going to call it closely.
I was going to say, now, one of the things that the commission did do, which I thought was, or the appeals board, I guess, that I thought was really interesting, kind of follows along with that point, Larry. The manufacturers fight every year for the manufacturer's title.
Which is a big deal.
It's a big deal to
only
me.
to manufacturers.
Well, yeah.
The fans probably don't care as much as they used to in the old days.
Yeah.
But it's a big deal to the manufacturers.
Well,
which is why they put all this money into
it.
Yeah.
Well, they actually increased the penalty on manufacturer points from 5 to 7. So, I mean, that's a 40% increase in penalty. Maybe.
Which is fine, because apparently from everything we've read, it was their fault.
Manufacturer issue,
Sure.
yeah.
It was their fault, so penalize them. And again, it's only a big deal. The manufacturer's trophy is only a big deal to the manufacturers, but to them it's a big deal. So you're right. Now, owners' points too, you know.
Sure.
The fans, I'm not sure, Joe, the fans really get caught up in the owners' points. 99.9% of the fans' focus is on the driver's championship and the driver's points. Some carry over maybe to the owners' points, but I don't think it's that big a deal. I think it's more of an insider thing, you know, matter of pride, that kind of thing.
And a little money.
Team, money involved too, which the owners don't turn down. But most of your fan focus, media focus, is on the driver's points in the championship, and those were affected too. You know, those were pretty tough penalties to Brad Keselowski and Logano. You know, that could have had, particularly for Logano, that after 26 races, that might have been the difference in Logano being in or out of the chase.
Exactly.
So big deal on driver's points.
I was going to say, you kind of worry about that for Matt Kenseth too, but Larry, he kind of served notice that he's not worried about it. He just went out and won the race at Darlington this past week.
That's what drivers used to say. Instead of worrying about points, go out and win races, and the points will take care of themselves.
Right.
And Joe, it's interesting. You could probably win some bar bets or trivia bets. Who's the winningest driver at this point in the season? Matt Kenseth. Got 3 wins, and he's like a stealth bomber, Joe. Matt is so low-key, he flies under the radar. He doesn't make any waves. He goes out, he leads laps, he wins races, he doesn't rattle any cages, and he's, like I say, he's kind of the stealth bomber of NASCAR. But he's a good little driver, great driver, not just good, he's a great driver. Switches teams and doesn't miss a beat. You know, some people said he made a mistake leaving Jack Roush, where he'd spent his entire Cup career, goes over to Joe Gibbs, and is the winningest driver at this point in the season.
I'm going to say he's already won more races this year than he won last year with.
I believe Matt probably had a pretty good idea what he's doing when he made the move.
What'd you think of the Darlington race?
Boring. Bored to tears, Joe. For Darlington, I kept wondering if maybe I was watching a replay of some of the California, some of those 1.5 mile cookie cutter tracks. It's the most, and a buddy of mine came over and watched it with me, Joe. We agreed it's the most boring Darlington race I've ever seen. I just, and they kept going on, our buddy Darrell and the radio guys, about, man, it's how impressive it was. They were on course for a record average speed of the race. Joe, when you have a high average race speed, that means it's probably a boring race, because that doesn't have anything to do with actual racing speeds. That means there aren't many cautions, and the average speed goes up. If you have one caution for litter on the track, your famous call at the fairgrounds, one litter on the track can just destroy the average speed of the race, because again, it doesn't have anything to do with how fast the cars are going. Really, it has to do with how few caution flags there were, and there weren't any at Darlington. That meant there wasn't a whole lot going on.
Does that mean that the skill is that much better, the equipment's that much better than it used to be, or is it just everybody's playing follow the leader in points racing already?
All of the above. I think it's all of the above. Now, having said that, a couple of weeks ago, you know, we had, let's see, where did we race 2 weeks ago? It was a great race, Talladega.
Yeah.
A great race at Talladega, one of the best we've had. Then we go to Darlington, another tough old track, and guys, just boring. You know, you could hear the snores coming from the grandstands.
But that's going to happen occasionally.
Oh yeah,
every racetrack is going to have one of those occasionally where it's just not, you know, it's they went out, they raced, and they're done.
Just like you used to have bad Super Bowls. Went through a stretch where the NFL had 3 or 4 snoozers for Super Bowls, and that's part of sports competition. Sometimes you have a lot of drama and excitement. Sometimes you have a snoozer in Darlington. Nobody's fault, was a snoozer. I think things will perk up, though.
Did you fall asleep in the middle of it?
Almost. Usually I keep a book at my desk, and I'll watch the race, and when something happens, I'll look up, and when they're just running in circles and droning on, I'll read for a while.
Unfortunately, I think Darlington probably epitomizes, from what we've seen, what has become the anthem of NASCAR fans in the last 5 years, and that is watch the first 10 laps.
Yep.
Watch the last 10 laps, and that's only 20
pretty well
laps you can
covered.
see. Yeah.
Used to say that about NBA basketball games. Watch the tip-off and then tune in for the last 3 minutes, and you've seen most of it. NASCAR, Joe, you know, didn't used to be like that. There was something going on almost all through the race, something somewhere, even pit stop. You know, NASCAR didn't have any timeouts or quarters or half times or anything, so there's usually something to follow all through the race, whether some guy up front like Yarborough used to, or Petty was running away with the race, there'd be a good race for second, third, fourth on back in the field. But it's almost comical at Darlington the other night, Saturday night, the cameramen were frantically searching back through the field to try to get 2 cars in the same frame. And it was pretty hard to do, you know.
That may be the best place to end this segment, right?
Had to get a wide-angle shot to actually get 2 cars
Need
together.
a fisheye.
Yeah. And again, kind of comical, the TV guys, at one point somebody passed somebody for 38, and they got excited about what a great battle it was. They're running side by side. But anyway.
Sometimes you got to do that, Larry. Well, sometimes in the booth you got to do that.
You do what you got to do. As you've done a few times
yes,
before.
Yes, sir. You pick your battles. You know, you pick what you get out there. All right. Coming up next, we're going to talk with a couple of up-and-comers, and I mean, these are young plants, young flowers that are going to grow, I guess.
Tomorrow's superstars. So.
Yeah, exactly. And where are they coming from? Well, it's not from our local racetracks per se. It's out of the USAC, Quarter Midget Association. There's a big national event coming up here in Nashville. We're going to talk about that next on Pit Pass.